Hello there. The Office for Budget Responsibility, OBR, collects and evaluates key economic data in the United Kingdom twice a year, much like the Council of Economic Experts here in Germany. The November numbers were even worse than the already abysmal data in March, and so they were a slap in the face for the government. The OBR recorded an inflation rate of 11.1% and points out that the rate would have been 2.5% higher without the government guarantee for energy prices. In addition, economic output is forecast to shrink by 1.4% in the coming years. But it goes further and worse. Rising prices are eroding real wages and reducing living standards by a total of 7% in the two fiscal years to 23 and 24, undoing the growth of the past 8 years. And before, new Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's government could even try and they tried to apologize the data with the Ukraine war and its aftermath, as Boris Johnson and Liz Truss had done. But the OBR made it clear that all UK trade data would be at least 15% better if the UK were still a member of the EU. In the Brexit campaign, the British were promised that food prices would fall, that there would be significantly more money available for public health care through the National Health Service, and that the economy would become more innovative and successful. The real numbers prove the exact opposite. Food is becoming scarcer and more expensive, healthcare is on the brink of collapse, and all economic data is pointing sharply down. Many people on the island have long wondered what part Brexit has in their difficult economic situation. The latest YouGov poll comes to the conclusion that 56% now consider Brexit to be a mistake. And what's more, every fifth Brexit supporter sees himself or herself deceived. But I still can't believe the other 80%. When Prime Minister Sunak also had to announce new immigration laws to counteract the growing shortage of skilled workers, for example, more than 4,000 doctors have left the island, a debate broke out. Almost all newspapers, whether serious or tabloid, conservative, liberal or social democratic, ran headlines on Brexit. And in a way as if it hadn't been a reality for 2 years. Some paint the spectre of a return to the EU on the wall, others hope for a rapprochement. The Sunday Times reported that Rishi Sunak and his government were aiming for the Swiss model as a model for the EU-UK relationship. The most important evidence was a statement by Treasury Secretary or Chancellor of the Exchequer Jeremy Hunt that he would remove the vast majority of all trade barriers with the EU. But just to explain, Switzerland has very extensive access to the EU internal market as part of the visa-free Schengen area and as part of the EU research and education programs. Conversely, it accepts the close harmonization with EU laws and pays into selected common pots of the EU. But the EU will never do that one again. The pressure on Sunak was such that he was forced to vehemently deny this in front of business leaders in Birmingham. Let me be clear on trade. Under my leadership, the UK will not seek a relationship with Europe based on alignment with EU laws. I voted for Brexit. I believe in Brexit. And I know that Brexit can and is bringing tremendous benefits to the country. If this guy was Pinocchio, the nose would have ended in space. Sunak did not say what the benefits already achieved should consist of. He probably couldn't have explained it to the bosses either. Too obviously, the opposite is correct. The trade agreements announced by the Brexiteers only exist with the former Crown colonies of New Zealand and Australia, and to put it mildly, they are no better than those of the EU. They are much worse. The economy lacks well-trained specialists for this, and productivity and sales fall, because while Britain was an important trading partner for most EU countries, the other way round, the EU was the central partner for the United Kingdom, and they can feel that now. All economic institutes come to similar data as the OBR. The British economy is noticeably declining more than the markets within the EU, and it is also losing momentum in the long term. That's one of the reasons Brussels is reacting fairly relaxed. Commission spokesman Daniel Ferry explained that any relationship between the European Union and a third country is based on a balance of rights and obligations, and that in this case is governed by the existing Brexit divorce arrangement. And translated, this means if the UK seeks a rapprochement, nobody has anything against it. But then the government in Westminster must officially submit concrete proposals. Otherwise, so it's said on the corridors in Brussels, London is talking to London again, trying to find out what London could ultimately accept. And this abstruse situation is well known from the difficult Brexit negotiations. They all know it in Brussels. A rapprochement between Great Britain and the EU would objectively be in the interests of both sides. In practice, however, it is not on the agenda because neither the Conservatives nor Labour would seriously pursue it. The British media appears to be conducting a pseudo-debate that is largely unfounded. Great Britain is experiencing the worst wave of strikes as well in decades. For the first time, tens of thousands of nurses in hospitals across the country are also walking down. They want higher wages and, which is more important, better working conditions. Instead of being on the ward, they are on the street. In England, Wales and Northern Ireland, nurses are on strike these days. It is their biggest strike since the NHS began. In England alone, there is a shortage of almost 47,000 nurses. Matt Tracy from the English Midlands, who also belongs to this professional group, describes the situation as follows. On the wards, there is a minimum number of nurses that are needed, but there aren't. Instead, the work is distributed to the few who are there, and they are burned out and tired. For nursing staff, the real wage level has fallen by an average of 8% since 2010, and in some cases by as much as 20%, according to the union. Now a balance is to be found that is well above the rate of inflation. The nursing staff are demanding a wage increase of 19%, but the government considers this to be unaffordable and is offering 4 to 5%. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has called on the union to call off the strikes, but those affected want their voices heard. And the UK healthcare system is run down. More than 7 million Britons are currently waiting for treatment or surgery, many of them for months. Even in emergencies, there's often no quick help because there are not enough places in care facilities. Too many people stay in hospital too long and occupy beds that are urgently needed for others. And long lines form in front of the emergency rooms. Patients sometimes have to wait for hours in the ambulance. The British government wants to use 1,200 soldiers to replace striking staff at border checks and ambulances now. At the same time, they oppose the wage demands of the trade unions, which demand inflation compensation. It would be irresponsible to let public sector wages and inflation spiral out of control, is what Cabinet Secretary Oliver Dowden told the BBC, which is wrong, by the way. But he says the demands of the unions are prohibitive. The unions assured that their members would be available for emergencies even during the strikes, so they are the reasonable ones. We have pledged that our members will leave the picket line and get into ambulances if there are emergencies that need attention, said union leader Onay Kazab. And I have friends in the UK, also in the emergency departments, and they told me the same personally. And they worked there as of the last time. I know under what pressure they are and under what conditions they have to work. It is unbelievable. We know we have staff shortages everywhere, but Brexit exacerbated it like hell in the UK. And there we are back to one comment I made in the middle of the video about the 80%. So 20% of Brexiteers now say they were deceived. No, 100% were deceived, but I really can't believe, after all you see now, that 80% still don't see that they have been lied to and deceived. Okay, part of them were the liars and deceivers, but I'm talking about the rest. The populism used in this campaign seems to have taken such deep roots that so many people are still believing it. I still can see it in the comments under my videos. Some people are not willing to learn, and I think in many cases it is the fact that humans have a very hard time admitting mistakes. And a lot of people are still not able to do this. They are not in the position to finally admit to themselves that they were wrong. But for the majority of people in Britain, I can only hope that these people will come to senses, and if the British politics will come to one point, as they did with the first agreement on the offshore wind farms I made a video about this morning, that they will come to their senses and will see in a globalized world it is no chance to go alone. And all their big promises of some big contracts far away on the other side of the world, how is that supposed to work if you are disconnected from your neighbors? But we definitely will see years before this finally happens. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.